Hello guys and girls, how's it going? Screezilla here and I hope you're all well. Welcome to today's video, a history of video of the Chi-To. Now today we're talking about the Japanese Type 4 Chi-To medium tank. These vehicles are hard to do much on, I must admit, because they're a small footnote of history. Few tanks of Japan have actually service records, especially in the Second World War. But there are a couple that did have service history, but there are very few that actually do. The Type 3 Chi-Nu, which had about 164 tanks built, didn't actually get any service history in it. The only tanks were up to the Type 2, which is the Hargo, I think. The Hargo, the Nago, and the Kaigo, I think it is. They have some service history to them. So it makes it very hard to make a history video of a tank that doesn't really have any history, but I'll do my best today and see what we can do. So let's start off with the Type 4 Heavy or the Chi-To. So not a Type 4 to Heavy, the Type 4 Medium or the Chi-To. Two of these vehicles were created by the end of the war. Their fate was to be pushed into a lake to stop Americans capturing them, although one was fished out and captured by American forces but scrapped not long after examining it, sadly. So we don't actually have any of these tanks as something to look at. However, there is a Chi-Nu with the Chi-To turret, I believe, still in existence. So the turret is still there with the Type 5 gun. The Type 4 Chi-To was laid to paper in 1943 and was the most advanced Japanese tank to be produced in the Second World War. The Japanese war machine only had enough metal to make 6 chassis and 2 full tanks, however, due to shortages from blockades and constant bombing attacks of the Allies on their industries. The Chi-To was a 30-ton all-welded tank with a good frontal armour thickness of 75mm. It had a 5-man crew with a main armament with the 75mm Type 5 cannon. In my mind, one of the best guns for its BR, the Type 5 is a great gun. With an 850 meters per second velocity shell and a 67-gram explosive load in the armor-piercing shell, it's capable of ripping through up to 200mm of steel in Japanese testing. However, it was low-grade steel plate. So in reality, it can get through about 140mm of armor, and that's what we have in the game. This means the shell is capable of ripping through the frontal armor of a jumbo and even a KV tank, which makes it a deadly weapon on the field. It's also extremely easy to aim. Well, let's just switch to the player view here. So we've got a Cromwell down there. I fired a little bit high that first shot. Second shot is much better though, straight into the crew compartment. He gets very lucky to still have 2 crew members remaining. Where am I? There you go. Along with the cannon, you get a 7.7mm machine gun. It's hull mounted and the gun has very poor arc of fire, sadly. You can only shoot directly in front of you, so it has really no anti-air support. Let's just have a quick look there. You can see it just in the front here of the hull. And it's very, very shallow arc of fire. You don't really have anything to protect yourself with small arms wise. So even attacking things like AAA milk floats, you know, the small AAA trucks, you can't really do much to them because you don't have a machine gun on your turret, so you can't use that to fire at people. Now, the Type 4 came with a new engine over the prior tanks, a 400 horsepower Mitsubishi 37.7 litre air-cooled diesel supercharged engine. This was a huge increase over the old Chi-Nu engine, having almost 240 horsepower more, along with much more torque. This gave this tank a top speed of 28 miles per hour, 45 kilometers per hour, which all in all was not too shabby for a time. It's a pretty nippy tank all in all. It's not too bad overland. It's not got a great reverse speed, but it's not too slow. T-34 there gets very lucky. Just bounced off of his engine plate there, and he now knows where my position is, so I've got to be a bit careful there. The Type 4 was also designed to be no more than 9 foot 5 wide in order to be transportable by rail with ease, one specification for all Japanese tanks that were built in this time period, excluding the super heavy tanks. Due to Japan's mostly mountainous terrain, it was vital that they could transport armour via the railway network. This gave the tanks a rather distinctive look, being very slim. However, this also meant their tanks tended to be a little taller than most others. And you can see that with this tank. It's quite a high profile on the vehicle, because it's quite narrow. If we look at the X-ray, you can see the crew's rather tight inside there. There's not really much room from left to right at all. Everything is compacted into the central mass here. You do have a slight little bit of ammunition stowage at the side here on the right, but there really isn't much at all. Most of this is taken up by the armour and the tracks being so close together. T-34 there. Get a nice bounce off his frontal plate, which I did not need. And I'm about to kiss my ass goodbye here, but he takes a second too long to aim, and I get a nice easy shot there of him. However, I don't look behind me at this stage, which was a bit of a mistake. Well, I do glance behind me there, but I don't look behind me enough, because a M4 will slowly creep up behind me in a minute and cause me a bit of trouble. Now, this is the Chaito Late. This is the sort of after the production model rather than the prototype model. And there is a bit of difference between this and the production model. The prototype does look a bit different. So the Type 4 was designed specifically to counteract the Sherman M4 tanks used by the Marines in the Pacific Theatre. The Japanese army needed something better than their current light tanks, which proved to be far too inferior to the medium American armour and guns. Although the Type 97 had proved to be capable of stopping the M4 and even a T-34 tank, it was only with ambush tactics, and in a pure head-on assault these tanks were at a large disadvantage with their riveted armour and 47mm gun. So in 1943 the Imperial Japanese Army decided to go with the Type 4. A stopgap was needed between the Type 4 and the Type 2. So they developed the Type 3 Chi-Nu, based off the Type 1 Chi-He chassis. So as you see here from the back, you don't have much chance against an M4. But we're not out yet, we still have another Chi-Nu to take out. We have the standard Chi-Nu. So let's jump on board her. So I'm expecting to be spawn camped here. And surprise, surprise, here comes a Churchill. Luckily spawn protection's on, and easy kill straight through the Churchill's armour. As I said, this gun is a fantastic gun. Now, the Japanese industries were capable of producing 25 Type 4s a month between the Mitsubishi and Kobe Sekosho factories. However, the aforementioned supply issue meant this never happened. The Type 4 remained untested by war, and it ended its life in the Hamana. It ended its life in Lake Hamana. Japan's most advanced tank never got much of a fanfare, at least until video games came about. Of course, in history, it will always be seen as a bit of a failure, but it had came into action. It may have been a rather fierce force to reckon with. With frontal armour capable of deflecting shots from the M4 Sherman, this tank would have shocked the Marine tankers who had until now only came up against tanks basically designed from World War I. The Type 95 Hago was commonly the tank of choice for the islands around Japan, especially things like Iwo Jima and Guadalcanal. These were mainly had Type 95s on them, which could do nothing to a Sherman, because the Sherman and the Marine forces could take out the Type 95 with rifle caliber bullets from their 30mm machine guns on front. The Marines were more wary of traps in the Pacific Theatre, and bunkers of course, than tanks, so a Japanese tank capable of fighting a Sherman head-on could have caused some severe issues, especially with their knowledge of local ground and the ability to dig into a position first. But luckily for the Allies in the Pacific theatre, these vehicles never got to fire their guns in anger. So, that's the history of the Type 4, the Chi-Nu. But let's talk about it, Chi-To. Things sound too similar. Now we're going to go on a bit of a rampage here because there's some spawn campers causing our spawn down at B2 a little bit of issue. Let's have some fun, shall we? So this is the standard Chi-To. This is the prototype variant, basically, which has that side machine gun here. It's basically the same, but it does have an offset turret. So how is it in-game? Well, at BR 4.3 and 4.7, you'll face some serious tanks. This vehicle was designed to fight the M3 Lee and M4 Sherman, but it will be capable of causing more damage to later vehicles of these tank family trees. You have a gun capable of punching holes in the front of almost any tank you come up against at this BR, and being you'll rarely face the Germans, you'll not likely face Panthers or Tigers, especially in the Chi-To late. But if you do, you still have the capability against them. The biggest problem with this tank simply its turret traverse time, its armour and mobility. The hand-cranked turrets are not fast by any standards. You may even get flanked by a Churchill, it feels that slow. This tank is also very high, so to get a hull down you need a rather large hill or a dead tank to hide behind. But with lack of turret armour, you'll still be struggling even hull down. This tank is best played in my experience to mid-long range sniper. The gun and the aim of the Type 5 are just beautiful in urban. In urban fights you will suffer seriously though. The Type 1 APHE shell is great and will dispatch any tank it penetrates, so this is very much a glass cannon. You also will suffer from close air support. With nothing to defend yourself against, you really don't have much chance of doing much with her. And it is rather hopeless when it comes up against a plane because it has no real defensive machine gun armaments. So let's have a little look in the garage, and this is your standard Chi-To here. So this one is 4.3 BR. Now I'm looking at realistic battle BR, of course. It does change a little bit in arcade, I think. So let's just go to customization. Let's just switch to a different armor. Not a different armor, a different color scheme. Let's just go to Battleship Grey. So as you see here, the standard variant has a slightly off-centered turret and a bit of a shot trap to the left and the right side of the tank. This section here, because it's curved a little bit more, it's a little bit easier to penetrate from the front. You do get some relatively good thickness on there, but it just tends to be a little bit of a shot trap, I found. The main difference between the Chi-To standard and Chi-To late is mainly the turret. With the Chi-To late turret, you don't get the extra machine gun on the side here, which doesn't work anyway, so you can't use it. But you also get a slightly smaller turret, slightly more centered turret, so it's got slightly better weight distribution. But that's about all that you get difference between them. The gun, everything else remains the same, they just look a bit different. At 4.3 BR though, this is a absolutely beastly tank, because you won't be coming up against some of the higher tier tanks with this. Now the crew is very, very compressed in here, so you do find that you do die rather easily, and as I said, with the hand crank turret, it is very slow to turn the turret around. It's got a very poor turret rotation speed. I think standard it's where are we? 11.8 things per second. It's slow, basically. It's bloody slow. As I say, the armor is pretty. It's okay. It's not the worst armor for a Japanese tank. It's got good armor. You will be able to deflect shots on her, but you don't want to go testing it out too much because you are pretty much a light tank compared to most other medium tanks which you'll be meeting, such as the T-34. But with your gun, you will be able to penetrate almost anything. So Chi-To late, just have a look at her in customization as well with the different camouflage. So as you see, it's a slightly cleaner looking vehicle. This sloped armour here is not as curved, so it's more of a sloped armour, so it doesn't have that slight bend in, and it's a little bit less flat, so you do bounce a little bit more shots off her. So you see here it's got almost a 86mm thickness, but if you turn slightly you do get a little bit better thickness from her. You can sort of put it to the side. You do get around about almost 100mm of armour from the front and to the side. So you can position yourself like this, but I would advise getting some bushes to hide up these weak points, because these will be penetrated with ease. The turret is not too bad, but again, as I say, it's not going to stop most things. Most guns at this BR are going to penetrate you, especially at 4.7. But overall, it's a pretty good tank. It's the best tank you'll get when you're grinding Japanese tanks. Once you get to here, once you get to the Chaito, it really makes a difference. The Japanese tanks feel much better. And again, on the X-ray, you can see you've got the ammo storage at the back, ammo at the bottom, and on the side here, and your crew are very central. So one shot in centre of mass and you are a goner. Now, there is actually a half Chaito in the game as well. As I said, the Chi-Nu Mark II is actually a Chaito turret. It's the same turret as you get on the late variant, but it's on the Chi-Nu chassis. And this makes this tank rather good. Having that turret really makes a difference, and being only a 3.7 BR, you are a deadly gun. This thing you have to think of more of a tank destroyer or sort of a long range sniper, because the armor is not going to stop much at all on this as well. Again, you can see the armor is terrible on it. The turret is not too bad, but you do have a little bit less armor than the Chaito, just to bring the weight down a little bit. But you do get this fantastic gun, the Type 5 gun, which really does make the difference. Okay, guys. And also the Chi-Nu 2 is a premium vehicle, just so you know. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found the Chaito to be a slightly interesting tank. There's not much history on it, sadly. There's nothing to do with battles or anything like that with it. It is a really good tank to play, and when you do unlock it for the Japanese tech tree, the Chi-Nu is probably the first tank you get that you feel like you've actually got a tank that can fight against other tanks with. But as soon as you get the Chaito, you're actually capable of taking down pretty much anything in game. You can even penetrate the M26 from the front with these things. This gun is a fantastic gun. As I say, it's got about 140mm of penetration, but the explosive filler in there really does make a difference. And if you penetrate, generally you're going to get a kill. For things like Churchills, KVs, and Jumbos, they don't stand a chance against you. So that is really handy. You've got that ability to take out tanks that are very hard to kill on the battlefield. But of course you do suffer yourself because you're an easy target. Okay guys, thank you very much for watching. Please let me know in the comments below what you thought of the video. Let me know what you think of the tank as well. I'd love to hear your opinions on the Chaito. As I say, it's one of my favourite tanks for the Japanese tech tree. And it has got probably my favourite gun in the game. So I really do hope you, if you give it a try, you do enjoy it as well. Alright guys, until next time, I will catch you then. Bye bye.